Good evening, members. Welcome to Castle Point Cabinet meeting. Members, we're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the fire alarm goes off during the meeting, please leave immediately by the nearest emergency exit and gather outside Runnymede Hall. Cabinet members, please introduce yourselves, starting on the right-hand side with Councillor Mountford.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Councillor Steve Mountford, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Evening. Councillor Tim Copsey, Cabinet Member for Strategic Planning.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening all. Councillor Rob Lillis, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Housing.
Good evening, everybody. Councillor Russ Savage, Cabinet Member for People and Community.
Evening all. Councillor Tom Gibson, Cabinet Member for Special Projects and Assets.
Good evening, everyone. Councillor Barry Palmer, Economic Growth and Climate.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Michael Fuller, Cabinet Member for Environment.
Thank you, members. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Sonia, any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Warren Gibson.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members, any declarations of interest? No? Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of June. Members, is it okay I sign the minutes of being correct? Councillor Lillis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just put on record that during the update that I gave at the last Cabinet meeting on the Housing Improvement Programme, I stated, and I quote, "A housing service review has also taken place with a new structure designed," unquote. Cabinet, my understanding from that sentence was that the service review had been completed. That is not the case. The HIP Board have since been informed that the end of September this year is being targeted for the completion of the service review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lillis. I'm sure that'll be corrected. With that correction, is it okay I sign the minutes? Thank you very much. Moving on. Question item 4, members' questions on notice. There are none. Agenda item 5, public consultation on the reintroduction of nighttime street lighting across the borough using Essex County Council's street lighting infrastructure. Councillor Mountford, could you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Chair. So we'll start with back in February 2014, the Conservative-run ECC made a decision to switch off the street lighting across the county, not just Castle Point. We know that in a survey, residents across Essex have stated that 54% of the residents did not feel safe after dark. Our current corporate scorecard relating to Q4 24-25 reflected this. Members, I'm proud to announce tonight that our independent administration will bring yet another election pledge to switch the lights back on overnight. In the current public consultation, we've seen a very positive engagement, with over 2,650 residents responding in the first week of the survey, and 85% of residents are now in favour of the lights being switched back on, which was anticipated. The street lighting cuts that ECC made is further evidence of how poorly the Conservative Essex County Council is being run and continually cutting services. A few other items to note. We are already funding the Rangers for the last 2 years, which the Conservative ECC administration stopped the funding for them. The Castle Point Council took the decision to keep funding the Rangers as they provide an invaluable service throughout our borough. The Rangers have an annual cost of £80,000, which we, Castle Point, have to absorb following the cuts from ECC. Also, ECC only pay for grass verges to be cut twice a year, when in fact we, Castle Point Council, cut the grass verges around 10 times a year at an incremental cost of £250,000 to Castle Point. So in order to reintroduce the street lighting to be switched back on throughout the night, we will need to enter into a contract with ECC to cover the legal and commercial arrangements to pay for the service. ECC have confirmed they need a minimum of 2 months' notice in order to carry out the necessary infrastructure and technical works. This decision falls to the Cabinet members, Russ Savage for People and Community and myself, Cabinet Member for Resources, rather than a Cabinet decision. Our intention is to fast track this arrangement with ECC to ensure the lights are switched back on as soon as possible, taking into consideration the 2-month lead time before the long winter nights. The indicative cost from ECC for switching the lights back on is £33,000 per year. So this year will be charged pro rata for the remainder of the year. There was no provision in the current budget, so I will make the final decision to specify the funding source if this decision is to proceed. And then for future years, the cost will be taken into account as part of the budget setting process, which will be classed as a growth item. The draft terms are set out in Appendix A, and members, I submit this very positive item for your consideration and is further proof of how this independent run council is testament to how well things have been run now and how well we've delivered on our promises. I welcome any comments or questions, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mountford. Members, are there any questions? Councillor Savage.
Moreover, a comment really. I echo everything that Councillor Mountford has said. Certainly as cabinet members, but certainly more so as councillors and residents, we've all seen a plethora of residents complaining about the streetlights not being on, incidents where people have fallen, you know, the shift worker arguments and that. And I think it's, as Steve has said, it's a pledge that we made to put those lights back on. One group of individuals within this chamber that I really do think needs highlighting are the Scrutiny Committee who've done a lot of work with this, and in particular, Councillor Cortez. I think, and again, to make that effort to push this forward has been outstanding. So thank you, guys.
Councillor Lillis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I thank both Councillor Steve Mountford and Councillor Russ Savage for the good work on this important item. Switching off our nighttime streetlights was always something that I have opposed. Why this decision wasn't challenged and reversed by the previous Conservative administration, I will never know. Members will recall that when Roger Hurst, the Conservative Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, last sat in this chamber on his campaign trail, I asked him whether he would support pressure being put on ECC to keep our streetlights on at night. He refused to do so. Even when I reminded him that the police's own safety advice is for us to park in a well-lit street, he still refused to do so. The report clearly highlights the fact that a minority of our residents feel safe after dark. Anything that we can do to help alleviate such concerns must be a good thing. As a husband and father, let me share with you something that I happened upon recently on social media. It was posted by one of our female residents, who shall remain anonymous, and I'll read just the first part of it. And I quote, "As a woman, walking alone at night without lighting simply isn't an option. You are taking a risk every time. The privilege element is men don't even think twice about this, and consequently don't even see it as an issue. Yet the simple fact is that almost all adult women in the UK have had multiple experiences that will make them never feel okay walking anywhere in the dark. That's why this is important. From a young age, women get told to walk holding our keys, not to walk alone, not to drink too much, stay on a lit path. Oh wait, this is exactly why street lighting is essential, and most women I know feel strongly about it, but nobody took this into account when these decisions were made. This must be a big factor in this next decision. The new lighting no longer makes this a cost or environmental issue. Helping all women feel just a little bit safer in our community is why this should be a no-brainer. Please just consider your friends, partners, daughters, just feeling a little less anxious when they are out at night or going to work, early or late, the carers, the NHS staff and shift workers." Unquote. Cabinet, as you would expect, I have completed the short public consultation on the Council's website. and I would urge others to do the same. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lillis. I think when EC decided to actually go down this line, they were so out of touch with what our residents wanted. It was all about saving money, without the thought of when the street lights were switched off, the amount of special services got in touch with me, our emergency services, about you try and find a house in the middle of the night at 4 o'clock in the morning when somebody's life's at risk and you're trying to find a house. It's very difficult. And I think really by putting our street lights on will not only help them, but it also make our, as you said, our residents feel safer. And with all the new CCTV going in later in the year, I think our residents can actually feel really safe in this borough. So members, there are 3 recommendations set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report, which I move. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second
Thank
that.
you, Councillor Mountford. Members, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on, agenda item 6, Hadleigh shop fronts and other UKSPF spend in Hadleigh. Councillor Palmer, please introduce a report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to seek the agreement of Cabinet for the proposal for the Hadleigh Shopfront Improvement Scheme, including the Hadleigh Shopfront Design Guide, which is attached to the report, and to seek the agreement of Cabinet to other proposals for the UK Prosperity Fund, the UKSPF, spend in relation to short-term delivery of the Hadleigh Vision, which is attached. It links in with the Council's priorities and objectives. The proposal in this report contribute directly to the Council's corporate ambitions of working for a prosperous future, we love Castle Point, and healthier, safer communities. At the meeting on the 9th of March 25, the Cabinet agreed to the Hadleigh Vision and identified some short-term actions on which to focus delivery, whilst proposals for long-term delivery were developed. At the same time, the meeting at Cabinet agreed the allocation of $86,000 for the delivery of the short-term actions in the Hadleigh Vision for the UKSPF funding available to the Council for the years 25-26. This comprised £35,000 in revenue funding and £51,000 in capital funding. A key recommendation of the Hadleigh Vision was to deliver of a shopfront improvement scheme. To support the delivery of such a scheme, a shopfront delivery guide setting out what a good shopfront design would look like and the context of it with regards to Hadleigh Town Centre has been prepared. This is attached in Appendix 1, the Urbanist Hadleigh Shopfront Design Guide. To support the delivery of such a scheme, the Shopfront Design Guide sets out what a good shop design would look like in the context of Hadleigh Town Centre. It provides and is proposed that the Shopfront Improvement Scheme is offered in Hadleigh Town Centre, which provides grants of up to £3,000 to independent retailers who operate at least one unit within Hadleigh Town Centre. To improve their shop fronts in line with the design guide, a Hadleigh Town Centre Shopfront Design Guide, which is Appendix 2, is attached to the end of the report and sets out the full details of how the scheme works. The grants will cover up to 50% of the costs for the retailer and or landlord for improving the shopfront property. The level of grant to match is match funded in line with the Shopfront Improvement Grant Scheme offered in other areas like Brentwood, Rochford and Tendring. It ensures that businesses has ownership and an incentive to deliver a good quality scheme. It is proposed that in 25-26, at least $24,000 is available from the UKSPF fund, revenue funding for Hadleigh for the Shopfront Improvement Scheme. This will mean that at least 8 businesses will receive the improvement grants. A larger number may receive smaller grants depending on the sums applied for. It is expected that the 24k will be sufficient for the demand that is likely to arise in 25-26. As it is a new programme, it will attract early adopters in the first instance. If it is successful, it may lead to further demand in future years. Some improvements to the shop fronts can be made without planning consent, but major structural changes to the shop front and new signage especially if illuminated, will require planning consent and advertisement for the consent. It is important that the planning applications for these businesses who have applied for the shopfront design guidance in preparation for their funding bids are assessed against the same design guidance for the purpose of their planning application. This is to enable this to come to Cabinet and approve the Hadleigh Shopfront Design Guide. It will give a small degree of weight to the Development Management Service to take the guidance into account when determining such applications. This guidance would then apply to other applications for more shopfronts, if it does lead to it being done again in the future years. Whether inside or outside, the shopfront scheme will ensure that the quality and consistency of the shopfronts in Hadleigh will improve over time. It should be noted that the shopfront design guidance is bespoke to Hadleigh. It reflects the character of London Road and is unlikely to be directly applicable in full within other town centres in the borough. In the future, it may also be appropriate to develop such guidance for the other town centres aligned with the renewal programmes for these locations. Other UKSPF projects in Hadleigh, having allocated $24,000 to the shopfront improvement scheme, this leaves $11,000 of revenue funding and $51,000 of capital funding allocated to Hadleigh, and it is proposed that the following projects will deliver from it. £1,000 for visual mechanising workshops, open to all businesses in the borough, but hosted in Hadleigh. £1,000 to improve the internal appearance of shopfronts, complementary to the shopfront improvement scheme. £1,000 for business forum for Hadleigh, recommending the vision of Hadleigh and driving local business success. £9,000 for the Hadleigh Art Trail, recommending the vision of Hadleigh and the intention of driving footfall into the town centre and grow the relationship between local artists and local businesses. £51,000 for a new children's play facility in Memorial Park, London Road, Hadleigh, again as part of the recommendation for the vision for Hadleigh to create new and improved green spaces in Hadleigh Town Centre, including parklets. The residential density in Hadleigh is increasing, and it is important that the children living in the area have places to play. The high quality play spaces in the location would also act as a gateway feature, which is another recommendation in our vision. There are three options. Option one is do nothing. This would prevent the effective expenditure of the UKSP fund assigned to Hadleigh and would run contrary to the decision taken by this Cabinet in March 25 regarding how we spend the funding. The potential cause there to be underspend would need to be returned to government on the 31st of March 26. In other words, if we don't spend it, we lose it. Option two is to agree the shopfront improvement scheme as detailed out in Appendix 2, endorse the Hadleigh shopfront guide as set out in Appendix 1, and agree to the other spends detailed in the Table 1. This report will then ensure that the Council can evidence the initial stages of delivery for the Hadleigh vision as agreed in March 25 and ensure it has spent its allocation of the UKSP fund by March 26. Option 3 is to identify an alternative programme for activities that the Cabinet wishes to bring forwards in Hadleigh Town Centre. This would need to align with the agreement for the Hadleigh vision. This may delay the expenditure of the UKSPF fund and put the Council at risk of having to return it on March 26. The preferred option is obviously, as detailed, the above. There are certain risk implications which are also attached to the report. Many of them you can read for yourselves and you will see they are all very positive. The only one that has a slight negative part is if nobody bothers to take it up, but I can't see that happening. Everybody's up for free money. This is a good news story for Hadleigh and the Borough, and I would like to thank Amanda Parrott, Billy and the retired Mike Simmons and Lauren for their work on this report and the successful Business Accelerator. The recommendations proposed to Cabinet is number 1, to approve the proposals for Hadleigh Shopfront Improvement Scheme, number 2, to approve the Hadleigh Shopfront Design Guide, and number 3, to approve the proposals for the spends related to the delivery of the Hadleigh Front Vision as detailed in Table 1 of the report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you,
I'm
Councillor.
open to any questions.
Right, thank you, Councillor Park, for that report. Members, any questions, comments? No? Okay then, members, it's good news for Hadleigh Town Centre. There are 3 recommendations set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report, which I will move. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. A joint second. Moving on.
Can you ask them to agree it, please, Chair?
Right, okay. Okay, agenda item 7.
No, Chair, you need Cabinet's agreement, please.
Oh, didn't they? Cabinet members agreed. Is that agreed? Agreed. Sorry, I got carried away with the good news that had the town centre. I thought we had agreed. Okay, agenda item 7, the Asset Review Board update. Next is a report providing an update regarding acquisitions, disposal policy and terms of reference for the Asset Review Board. Councillor Tom Gibson, please introduce this item.
Thank you, Leader. The Asset Review Board, a member working group of the Cabinet chaired by myself as the appropriate portfolio holder, was set up alongside the development of the Council's acquisition and disposal policy, adopted in February 2024, in order to oversee the execution of the policy as follows. It has 3 main functions. 1, to provide advice and recommendations to the Director of Commercial and Assets in relation to the administration of the policy, to ensure transparency in its execution, and to review the Council's land holdings and building assets by providing member oversight and input into their use and management. Officers then collate and update the work to explore potential acquisitions and disposal of assets and provide information to members for consideration at the Board. This includes key information such as current status of assets, maintenance issues, interdependencies, potential income or costs, and resourcing matters and other high-level options. Since the acquisition and disposal policy was adopted, the Council has also adopted the voluntary and community sector lease policy. This policy ensures that council-owned assets occupied by voluntary and community organisations are fully maximised for the benefit of residents, offering up to a 50% reduction on what would be the standard market rent. An example where this policy has been utilised recently is the new Home Hub at Benfleet Pavilion on Brook Road, which I very much look forward to watching serve the community by offering invaluable services across youth provision, specialist workshops, mental health and wellbeing facilities and much, much more. As part of this annual review of the policy and the work of the Asset Review Board, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on some of the other fantastic projects, both completed and underway, that the Asset Review Board has been responsible for. You've got the reinvigoration of the Paddocks Community Centre, which breathed new life into a cherished community asset that was neglected for years by the Conservatives and future-proofing it for years to come. The foundation of a community hub, or the foundations rather, sorry, of a community hub within the Kiln Road Council offices, and with value partners such as USP College and CAVS moving into the space, alongside ongoing discussions with Essex Police and the NHS with a vision to provide public-facing services and allow more joined-up working. There have also been massive enhancements to the facilities at Benfleet Football Club at Woodside Park, with permission granted for an upgrade to several areas of the clubhouse, as well as a brand new stadium and all-weather training pitch. The purchase of Abbeyfield House in Hadleigh, which will be turned into desperately needed temporary accommodation for our borough's homeless. An exciting incoming business into the new Thorney Bay Pavilion, of which full details will be released shortly. The complete refurbishment of the Knightswick Shopping Centre, which will result in a shopping centre provision fit for modern demands and for years to come. And the purchase of a new, modern, custom-fit waste vehicle workshop on Roscommon Way, which will future-proof our invaluable waste collection service for years to come. I've chosen to end on that one just to really sort of drive home the work that the guys in the assets team have been doing. So those, I'm not sure if it's been discussed publicly before, but the situation before we reviewed it of the waste vehicle workshop was one of a situation where we had a workshop which was physically too small for our waste vehicles to fit into. I believe that arrangement was signed off by a previous administration around 15 years ago, and was just allowed to carry on with I'll say very little oversight, no oversight whatsoever, really. That resulted in us, over the course of that time, paying, when we was buying new waste vehicles, not only paying for the vehicles, but also paying over the odds to have them lowered and extended to be able to fit into the waste vehicle workshop that we had decided to take out a 15-year lease on. That, I think, is credit to Matt and the whole team. That's the sort of situation they were dealing with. There was no central register of our assets. We were finding out ad hoc what we owned, what we didn't, what we insured, what we didn't. And I just wanted to use that as a bit of a case in point, really, as to how far we've come and how hard the guys in the asset team have been working. So thank you all for that. There is a slight amendment to be made to the terms of reference for the Asset Review Board as set out in paragraph 7.1 of the report. This will just ensure that the annual report is consistently delivered to Cabinet for public oversight and transparency. With that, Leader, I'd like to thank Matt Howard-White for compiling this report and for his leadership of the asset team, as well as the rest of the assets team who have completely transformed the Council's asset management since their respective appointments. I would, of course, be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson. Any comments, members? No comments. Okay then, members. There is one recommendation set out in paragraph 3.1, which I will move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mountfield.
I happily second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 8, recreation update. Councillor Dawn Gibson, please introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Some more good news, hopefully. So following the rollout of our new Castle Point Active brand, I would now like to present one of the most encouraging updates that we've seen in our recreation services. The recreation update report before us is more than a summary. It's a celebration of how our council is actively improving the health, wellbeing and sustainability of our community. I'll start with our successful external funding wins, which have already had a visible impact across Castle Point. We secured £227,000 from the Public Health Accelerator bid, helping us launch the Find Your Active referral campaign. Already, over 400 individuals have taken part in this vital programme, benefiting from tailored activities in our leisure centres and community spaces, with outreach soon expanding into our parks and open spaces this summer. This initiative isn't just about increasing activity, it's about tackling health inequalities head-on, with a commitment to co-designed, community-focused solutions. We've also made impressive strides in sustainability and energy efficiency. Through the Sport England Swimming Pool Support Fund, we secured £98,800 in match funding to install solar panels at Waterside Farm Leisure Centre. Thanks to an efficient tender process, we reduced the project cost while still receiving the full grant. The result? A projected 143,000 kilowatt-hour reduction in energy use annually, saving us around £30,000 every year, which is a saving that could almost completely cover the reinstatement of the streetlights after Councillor Cortez's work to get them switched back on, as well as significantly cutting our carbon footprint. A clear win for both our environment and our budget. On the topic of inclusivity, I'm proud to report the installation of the pool pod devices at both Waterside Farm and Runnymede Leisure Centres. These £80,000 investments now allow people with disabilities and mobility issues to access the pools independently and with dignity. This is a significant enhancement in our effort to create welcoming, barrier-free recreational spaces. We're also pushing forward with the Sport England Place expansion programme, where initial test and learn funding of just over £250,000 has already enabled leadership training, community workshops and new youth and wellness activities in Canvey Island. From the transformation of underused spaces into youth hubs to the launch of free tennis and cardiovascular wellness sessions, this work is shaping a model of recreation that is collaborative, accessible and rooted in community engagement. Now we've gone further by submitting a £1 million major grant application to scale this work across Canvey Island over the next 3 to 4 years. With this funding, we aim to roll out initiatives like bike distribution for children, dedicated youth development officers and strategic plans to turn our open spaces into true active wellbeing hubs. This investment targets the most pressing needs, reducing inactivity, supporting youth, addressing inequality and creating positive physical activity experiences. Importantly, the vision doesn't end with Canvey. The lessons we gain here will help us expand this transformation across the borough, ensuring that no community is left behind. Finally, I want to recognise the efforts of our recreations team and our partners from local schools and voluntary organisations to the Essex Youth Service for their part in delivering these outcomes. Your work is not only noticed, it is truly appreciated. In conclusion, Chair, I ask Cabinet note the contents of this report, which clearly demonstrates how thoughtful investment, effective partnerships and strategic planning are producing real, measurable, material results for our residents. I'd like to thank Shane Williams, the Assistant Director for Leisure, for his work on this report, and I, of course, will be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Members, are there any questions or comments? No, it's all good stuff, and I think the Leisure team have done extremely well to get some of this grant funding across the threshold. So, members, that item is there just to be noted. Is that noted, members? Thank you very much. Agenda item 9, request for discretionary disabled facilities grant. Councillor Lillis, please introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Cabinet, you will now be familiar with such requests for discretionary disabled facilities grants. This is the fourth such request that I've had the pleasure of presenting to Cabinet since I was appointed to this role. That said, I think it is always important in the interests of transparency that each request before us is considered on its own merits. The Council has received a Disabled Facilities Grant, or DFG, recommendation for the Child of Borough residence, Child D. This was provided by an occupational therapist who has recommended works which are required to enable Child D to live safely and as independently as possible in their own home. As the cost of these works is forecast to exceed the mandatory limit of £30,000, an additional discretionary grant is being requested to top up the mandatory grant. By way of some background, Environmental Health Services received an occupational therapist, or OT, referral on behalf of Child D after it had been identified that they were experiencing the following difficulties: accessing bedroom and bathroom facilities. The OT recommended that the following works are considered necessary and appropriate: to create a wheelchair-accessible ground floor bedroom with direct access to an ensuite shower room with graded floor shower. At the request of parents of Child D, the case was forwarded to the Council's nominated delivery partner to compile the necessary documentation required as part of the grant application process. The home of Child D was surveyed, technical drawings completed, and suitable contractors engaged to obtain quotes for the works. The cheapest acceptable quote of 3 for completion of the relevant works, including all fees, was £55,230.90. Subject to eligibility criteria being met, the Council is legally required to approve properly made applications for DFG up to £30,000. After the mandatory £30,000 grant has been awarded, this will leave £25,000, 230.90 pence. However, with works of this type and extent, the need to provide a contingency for unforeseen works is industry standard, so it is recommended that authorisation of up to £30,000 is approved to ensure that any reasonable unforeseen works can be covered within the grant. The works applied for are considered necessary and appropriate to meet the needs of Child D and are reasonable and practicable considering the age and condition of the building. Of the 3 options before you this evening, option 1 is recommended due to the necessity for the works to be completed, the demonstrable benefits provided to Child D, a disabled person, and the need to ensure that works are undertaken in a timely manner with minimum risk of delay or disruption for Child D and their parents. In accordance with paragraph 2.6 of the policy, a cap charge of £10,000 would automatically be placed on the property for the mandatory DFG works because they are valued at more than £5,000. This amount would be recovered only if the property is sold within 10 years. The policy also states that discretionary grants will be recovered in full following the sale of the property. An additional charge to the value of the final sum awarded would therefore also be placed on the property for the total amount of discretionary funds awarded. This charge would not have an expiry term. I take this opportunity on behalf of all those here present to wish child D and his or her parents all the very best for the future. And finally, I requested officers to provide details of previous DFG grant activity for comparison to show the fantastic work carried out this last year under this administration, and I will circulate that information to all members after this meeting, but I just want to give you an idea of some of the numbers. So back in 2020, 2021, the number of DFGs totaled 22, for a total DFG spending amount of just shy of £300,000. Fast forward to 24-25, there were 89 DFGs, quadruple the number for 2020-2021, for a total spend of just shy of £1 million. So, I would very much like to thank Jeanette Parker East, the Assistant Director for Environmental Health, Licensing and Community, Simon Llewellyn, the Environmental Health Operational Manager, and Laura Hemsworth, the Senior Environmental Health Officer, for their good work on this grant application and for all the good work that they are clearly putting in behind the scenes with our nominated delivery partner, all of which is benefiting our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lillis. Members, are there any comments or questions? Councillor Savage.
I love these grants. I think it's not only for the child, but for the wider family unit. You know, it's allowing parents to live, you know, because the difficult, I've got a friend whose child is disabled, and the amount of effort that these guys have to put in just to do the daily stuff that we take for granted, I just think it's fantastic. So well done, you guys. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. And I echo what you say. I've been here a long time, and I must admit, the team's worked hard. I've never seen so many grants coming forward, and it's great that we can do it, what we're doing, and I appreciate it, and I think that's what being a councillor is all about. So members, there are two recommendations set out in paragraph 3.1, which I move. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second
Councillor
that.
Matfield, thank you very much. Members, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Agenda item 10, matters referred from the Overview Scrutiny Committee. Members, there are two items referred from the Climate Policy and Scrutiny Subcommittee. First of all, we have a report on the Castle Point Biodiversity Report. Councillor Edwards, please introduce your item.
Thank you, Leader. In September, the Climate Policy and Scrutiny Subcommittee agreed that a biodiversity report should be prepared for Castle Point. Now, this is a requirement under Section 40 of the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act. A report has been prepared, and it recommends 5 core areas of action: that we establish clear governance, that we have development management policies in place to support biodiversity, that we review land management, that we complete process reviews, and that we make sure that we've got an effective education programme in place. At a meeting on the 16th of June, the subcommittee proposed revisions to 4 out of 5 of those actions. These are set out in detail in paragraph 3.1 of your report. These changes were intended to strengthen the actions, in particular to ensure that there's clear accountability and to encourage other landowners, not just the council, to support our biodiversity aims. Chair, I commend the 2 recommendations which we've set out in paragraph 4.1 of the report to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Members, are there any questions or comments? No questions or comments? Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Edwards and the Climate Policy Scrutiny Subcommittee for such excellent work of a very important subject. Members, there are two recommendations set out in paragraph 4.1, which I've moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor
Thank you, Chair.
Mountford, thank you very much. Moving on then, members. Finally, we have a report from the Climate Action Plan 2025. Councillor Edwards, please introduce this item.
Thank you, Leader. At our meeting on the 16th of June, the subcommittee considered a draft of the Climate Action Plan for Castle Point. This aims to guide local progress towards net zero by 2050. The subcommittee noted the Essex Climate Action Commission report from 2021. This was prepared by a cross-sector group of 30 commissioners, and it's a key guidance document for us. It sets out details of a framework for achieving net zero across the whole of Essex by 2050, which is structured around 6 core themes: land use and green infrastructure, energy, the built environment, transport, waste and community engagement. The subcommittee considers that the Essex Climate Action Commission report should be endorsed as guidance, and we note that there are restrictions on what Castle Point ourselves can do, particularly in relation to transport and water infrastructure. However, there are changes that could be made locally. A future report will come back to committee around the Climate Action Plan for 2025 once the subcommittee has had further discussions on the plan. And I'd like to thank Amanda Parrott, our Assistant Director of Climate and Growth, and her team for all of the work that's gone in so far, and look forward to the finalisation of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Members, are there any questions for members or comments? No questions or comments. Members, there are 4 recommendations set out in paragraph 4.1, which I will move. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Seconded.
Thank you very much. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Okay then, members, that concludes formal business for this evening. Meeting closed at 7:41. Thank you very much and a good evening.